Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where in the world you are connecting from today, and welcome to SolarWinds webinar on operational priorities for MSPs in response to COVID-19. I'm your host today. My name is Colin Knox, and I'm the Head of Community Engagement here at SolarWinds MSP. I am the former owner of a Fast Growth MSP and was the founder and former CEO of Passportal. A little bit of housekeeping before we get started today. All attendees are on mute, and that's not because we don't want to hear from you. That's because we want to guarantee the best possible audio experience for you today. In fact, we do want to hear from you. These webinars are for you, and we want to make sure that you are getting the content and answers that you need. So if you have any questions, please use the questions panel in the GoToWebinar sidebar, and please do ask questions at any time. Do let us know if you have any audio or video issues. If you are having audio issues, we would recommend dialing in over the phone versus computer audio, as that does seem to be a more reliable connection during the high load periods. And before anybody does ask, this session is in fact being recorded. Before we we'll jump in first and introduce our presenter for the day, Mr. Dave Wilkeson. He's the CEO of MSP Advisor. He's got over 25 years experience working with VARs and MSPs of all sizes, from very small to very large. He built his own 8-person VAR into an 80-person MSP and has a consulting practice focused on helping MSPs achieve operational excellence. Most importantly, he lived and managed his business through the 2008 financial crisis. So before we get going, and welcome to the show, Dave, we did want to launch a bit of a poll to help us guide the conversation and where we need to put the most focus, just to find out what area you view as the most challenging in the days ahead for you. Is it your staffing and staff management? Is it your client retention, back office management, sales and marketing, or kind of just a little bit of all the above? We'll just get that in there. But Dave, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Colin. Glad to be here.
So we'll see where this one lands for this show here. I know last time we had a lot of client retention and sales and marketing, but
I won the bet last time, so let's see what happens.
You did win the bet last time. You did win the bet last time. So we'll see. It's lining up to be a little bit of a different focus, but looks like the priority is still going to be very similar. So looking at most of the group, or the highest group, is client retention again, followed very closely by all of the above. So and then next, sales and marketing. So it looks like we'll be doing a very similar presentation to last show. So let's start out with staff. We've got this challenge of staffing during the COVID crisis, and maybe in some areas that some of our attendees today may have not realized or considered. So let's dip into some of the issues to consider here.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, with staff is just confidence and instilling confidence in your staff. I think there's a lot of fear at every level, personally, professionally, business owners, at all levels. There are a lot of fears out there because there's just a lot of unknowns right now. And I think we really need to portray confidence to our staff. We need them to understand that there is a captain at the helm, and that you're working through the issues and problems as they come up.
Well, definitely. And part of that instilling confidence kind of ties into the next area of making sure that they feel valued. Give them confidence in what they're doing and what they're a part of right now and where you need them, because that's also vitally important to everybody's success in this period.
And it's hard because a lot of us, or most of us, have our employees working from home, so there's a much greater disconnect than is typical. You can't just give a quick high five to one of your staff members at the water cooler. I mean, everything is remote and electronic, and you may not have the same view of what the staff is doing as you're going through your day.
No, absolutely. I mean, this is one of those times where as much communication as you can do and being creative in doing so, since you aren't all together, is very important there. And then I think the last point that we've got here is one of those ones that some of our partners for sure just haven't recognized, with it being a health crisis that we're dealing with right now.
Yeah, and it's unprecedented, right? I mean, we've never, as an industry, lived through where we've got such a giant, unpredictable staffing issue. So, we could have staff not be available for 14 days or longer, just out of the blue, and not just one staff member, but we could have a whole group of staff members out at the same time. So, this is really unprecedented as a challenge.
Yeah, so let's jump in on what some of the immediate actions that we should be doing as we look to handle the staffing situation.
Yeah, for sure. I think obviously a meeting is in order, and probably most of you have already done this, but you need to pull your staff together. You need to reinforce that you're all working together, that your priority is the staff, and then secondarily the clients. You need to definitely instill that in your staff. And then number two, I think is pretty obvious, and I think most are doing this, but you really need to shift to a remote work environment. Now, I have heard of some MSPs that have been reticent to do this. The real problem they face, back to what we just talked about, this idea of multiple employees being out at the same time. If you are pulling your employees into the office, you're at a much higher risk to have multiple infected workers at the same time, and that could be devastating to an MSP.
Absolutely. I think it's not worth the risk of having the team collectively together, because if one person is sick or has been exposed to somebody that's sick with this, you risk your entire team being offline and unavailable to assist. So I think most of the MSPs, in suit with what their clients have been doing, have shifted to remote work environments. And granted, many MSPs were already set up quite well to do a lot of their services remotely. I mean, that's kind of the benefit of remote monitoring and management type stuff. So they've got the basic tools that way, but some of them may had not yet implemented a collaboration tool to help with communication, like Teams or Slack, because now that they're not shoulder to shoulder in the same working area, they can't just turn around and ask a question or overhear what somebody else is talking about. So these are things that they should definitely be looking at.
Right. Another thing that I recommend just normally are the idea of huddles, and huddles are quick, short meetings with very specific agendas. And I like huddles just in general to keep people connected and to create a cadence around operations. But I think in this situation, it's even more critical because you have these remote workers, and I think staying in touch, being able to react to issues quickly, daily huddles will definitely help with that situation.
Yeah, well, and it gives that camaraderie. It gives you an opportunity for everybody to be connected, even for a short period, 5 to 10 minutes, where you can catch up and hear what all of the technicians are hearing from all of their clients, what they're experiencing, what's going on. If there's something that you need to take action on immediately, you have that opportunity to delegate and let people know and communicate it. So it becomes so much more important. I mean, these are things that I did in my MSP regularly, but now, especially when you're dealing with a crisis period, it's so much more important.
And one other great idea that I just got yesterday from one of my clients is the owner set up office hours in his Teams. Actually, he uses Teams, and so he is online for a certain period every day, or I think every other day. And any employee that wants to talk to him can just pop in there, and they can video chat, and he's available and willing to talk. So I thought that was a great idea as well.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's really good. Okay, so these were the immediate things. Let's step into over the next few weeks where the focus area should be with staffing. You got your first point up there already, so let's dive in on that.
Yeah, so I think what's going to happen as we move forward is demand is going to go down. So we see a lot of support issues, a lot of questions as your clients move their workers remotely, and so demand is very high. But I think that we're going to see that start to slow down as projects stall and those sorts of things happen. So, in normal times, I'm always a proponent of allowing for overtime when it means getting billable work done more quickly, assuming you have things in the funnel. But as we move forward, that funnel, I think, is going to get a lot more lean. And so we really, really need to watch overtime and the costs associated with that.
Definitely. And going into the next point, it kind of flows well with that not only are the end users at our clients, some of them having to work unusual hours with the work from home, whether it's homeschooling or having to deal with something else or caring for somebody, but they have that need for some evening and even nighttime support. So to avoid some of that overtime, we've started to see some MSPs that are staggering the schedules across their service team to be able to accommodate an expanded service hours and kind of add some of that flexibility even to their staff.
Yeah, I mean, what we're seeing is a huge shift in just when people are working, because you've got a lot of children at home, essentially being homeschooled to some extent. You've got a lot of sick people, a lot of sick family members. And so you're just seeing a lot of these staggered schedules where workers are doing a lot more in the evening and on weekends. And I think, staggering those schedules is helpful, like you said, both to the staff and to your clients as well.
Well, and this is one of those areas where, we'll touch on it a little bit later, but definitely adds even a little bit of goodwill for the clients, right?
Sure.
Being able to be a bit more accommodating to what their needs and their employees' needs might be.
Yeah, and I think the final issue here is just to consider safety issues when you're going on site. The interesting thing is at this point, there are so many companies that have sent their workers home. It also presents some opportunity here, and we're going to talk a little bit more about it later, but just consider the fact that an employee going into a largely empty building, if they obviously follow some basic social distancing protocols, can actually be very safe because they're not around anyone. So there's an opportunity there to maybe do some projects or complete more quickly some projects that would be difficult when everybody is actually there.
Definitely, and still just for the staff being a bit mindful and making sure that they either have supplied to them or arranged to have gloves just in case, even though a lot of buildings have upped their own sanitation and like sanitizing procedures and cleaning procedures, just to make sure that they have the typical things to make sure that they're avoiding the potential from picking up any sorts of germs anywhere right now.
Yeah. Gloves and sanitizer for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll jump into the most popular topic that people wanted to learn about today. So as we jump into client retention, we did want to launch another poll just asking, what revenue impact are you expecting over the next 3 months? And client retention obviously being part of that, and you're keenly interested in this. So curious if you are expecting or kind of predicting that you're going to see, minimal, maybe noticeable up to 25%, or, substantial revenue impact at a quarter of your revenue or more, or maybe even none. So we'll give a minute there for that to be. But any guesses here of what people are expecting, Dave?
Well, I mean, I know where I'm at on this. I mean, I think that unless something significant happens that short circuits this process, I think we're all going to be significantly impacted in terms of revenue.
Yeah, I think there will. I mean, just looking back at what happened in 2008 and what I remember happening in my own MSP back there, I mean, we were in that 25 to 30% risk on the revenue. So
the average
healthy split here of up to 25% for 41% of you, and greater than 25%. And kudos to those that are saying that they're not expecting a huge impact, 0 to 10%, and that's very fortunate for you. We're thrilled for that, and hopefully even some of the points we offer here today can help you further minimize your impact. So yeah, let's jump in on this big challenge of client retention.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing that we're going to talk about is how to generate goodwill. I think the only silver lining, or probably the biggest silver lining in all of this, is we really have an opportunity to generate goodwill with our clients, and it's kind of unprecedented. Even in 2008, I remember doing a lot of work one-on-one with clients to help them through that process and generating that goodwill. But I think it's even more significant in this crisis.
Well, and it's one of those periods where people are very in tune with the good that you can do for them because they are nervous, they are stressed. So they better recognize that goodwill. But at the same time, like we've discussed on other calls here, while it's a great time to generate goodwill, it's also a great opportunity for people to maybe not shine in the greatest light right now if the clients don't feel that their needs have been met. Sure. And so it's something to be very in tune with.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think that does bring us to the next point of we just have to be very concerned about reassuring our clients, and because our staff is going to be overwhelmed, our staff is going to be stressed themselves, and you know how easily that shows through when there's a lot of pressure on our staff.
No, definitely, and we know that clients are very demanding in this period because they're looking out for their own best interests and in maintaining what they need as a business. So, being in close contact with your clients, and we'll jump in on some actions in a minute here, but, making sure that you're reassuring your clients and your staff in this, but to just be sure that you're communicating everything with your clients as you work through this together. And then jumping into the next point here, issue to consider is the longer horizon, the longer tail on revenue retention now.
Right. I mean, you have to look at this, over the next 6 to 12 months, because I think we're all going to see a pretty significant revenue decline in the short term, and hopefully we look at opportunities to help our clients through that and work towards solidifying that client as a forever client, as I like to call them.
Yeah, it's forging those relationships, and it definitely isn't a do one thing right now and you're good. This is going to be a continued stressing period because, while we're in the health crisis right now, this could and likely will act as a catalyst for financial recession coming out of it. So there's going to be a timeline associated. So let's jump in on the immediate actions that the MSP should be taking.
Yeah, and that first one really goes to that idea of goodwill. I really recommend that MSP owners make calls to the owners of their clients. And, if you're a smaller MSP, you're probably doing this already. But if you're a larger MSP, chances are your sales staff handles a lot of your clients, and potentially you may or may not have had some conversations with the client owners. And I think now is the time to really reach out. Not with a call that really has an agenda to it or a script to it, but just, calling, letting them know that you're there for them, letting them know that you've taken actions or what actions you've taken to make sure that your staff is as available as possible, and just listening to them and asking them what their needs are.
Yeah, listening is really the most important point. Just making an assumption and offering something or telling them everything that you're doing, while can be good, it's about understanding what's stressing them right now. I mean, even our polls today have shown that in our spread of partners, we have people that are concerned about different things and different weightings. So taking that time to listen, and I think the other good thing about this, Dave, making those phone calls to the owners is we're getting 1 million emails right now from every company we've ever, filled out a form on their website in the last 10 years.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Saying how
a lot of junk mail
to help us. So this is something that stands out.
For sure. I think the other thing, with any of your sales team, you're probably experiencing. Hopefully, you're on the tail end of that of just really poor support times and support metrics. So, because there was such volume of issues from this massive work from home shift, there were just a lot of there's just a lot of blown metrics basically, and who better to kind of field some of those issues is anyone involved in sales. So I recommend shifting them into more of an account management and customer satisfaction role, potentially calling end users to chat with them about maybe a ticket that's taking longer than it should to get resolved and so forth. I think it's a really important move, and given that your sales team is probably not making a lot of new sales right this second, I think it's a good idea.
Well, and it is a great idea when your technical service team is kind of stretched very thin. This can offload, and when you're looking at how busy that team is and how important communication is with your clients, this fills a great role, and who better to do it than sales type staff who are very personable and relationship driven and conversational to be out there communicating with your clients.
Sure, and used to dealing with objections and calming people down. I think those are definite skills that are useful, and it does take some pressure off of your technical staff.
Oh, absolutely.
And speaking of technical staff, and I would say most people have already done this, but freezing projects that are going on and just shifting those resources so that they're working on these emergency remote work projects, I think is critical to getting your clients up and running properly and securely in a remote work environment.
No, I think it is one of those good ideas, and this is where, as a business, you need to be nimble in how you're working with your staff and interacting and handling your clients' needs, right? Right now, when we've got this big load of moving everybody to work from home, which hopefully is starting to subside, this is a great shift of resources. We'll talk a little bit soon in what's happening over the next few weeks, but there could be a backwards rotation on that to counteract some things. And so it's being nimble in the business to make sure that your clients' most pressing needs are managed, which a lot of projects this second probably are less important than making sure everybody can work. So,
Sure.
And then jumping into number 4, here we see a little bit of a flow through or result of some of those shift adjustments that maybe we made on the staffing basis as well.
Yeah, for sure. And in normal times, this is not something that I would recommend giving away. If you don't have expanded service hours in your normal contract or coverage for home PCs, for example, in your normal coverage or in your normal contract. But I think under the circumstances, this is a nice gimme to your clients because again, you've got this shift of work times at your client side and at your staff side. And the other thing too is, a lot of them are working on home PCs, and you're really handcuffing your staff in terms of support if those home PCs don't have some sort of an agent so that you can remote into them. So potentially temporarily expanding and being able to remote into those home PCs, I think, is important.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so jumping into the next few weeks, I mean, the one theme stays the same. Over communicate, be talking to your clients at all times and keep in close touch.
Yep, and I can't stress this enough. I mean, the more you are communicating, the more you're going to get a heads up if your client is having financial issues, and B, just figuring out what those needs are of your client and hopefully being able to react to those things. And by over communicate, again, you mentioned it. I mean, we're all getting a glut of emails. I would strongly recommend that if you can shift, your resources around so that you can get sales or potentially even other areas, admin area type employees to reach out and talk to clients. I mean, I really think that personal calls are the way to go here.
No, I totally agree. And you know what? If some of your clients may not be responding to your reach outs right now, realize that they are also very busy and stressed and trying to manage things through in their own business. So that doesn't mean that they're not hearing or seeing your reach outs. Continue up with it, persist with it. Because sometimes it's as simple as seeing that, yeah, I saw an inbound phone call and I got a quick follow-up email saying, just reaching out, wanted to see if there's anything else we can do to help, want to hear how things are going for you and keep in touch. You know, that will show them that you are thinking about them. And when they do have that time free up, they will reach back out. So
For sure.
I think it's good. So next thing is opportunistically, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that in the coming weeks, as that glut of emergency remote work projects eases and some of the support issues calm down, I think that there's going to be some opportunities to get some of the projects that you have in the hopper completed. So shifting those resources back to those projects and really examining the projects to figure out what is safe and reasonable, and in some cases even because of those empty buildings, possibly easier to get those projects completed and keep that cash flow moving.
Absolutely. And speaking about cash flow, let's jump into some of the internal actions that we should be doing. I mean, we talked a lot about the client-facing things, the working with and communicating with the clients, but internally, we need to start taking some immediate action to evaluate where we're at with all of our clients, the status of it all, so that we are better prepared to handle and respond to any incoming request if it comes from financial relief or what have you.
Yeah, for sure. And I really recommend that you put together a list of your clients and really take a hard look at each client. Determine, are they in a high risk industry? So the travel industry, retail, hotels, airlines. I mean, all of those industries are really at risk. So definitely do a risk assessment by industry. Also identify the clients that potentially had financial issues prior to going into this. So who was having problems? Maybe they were a slow pay. Maybe you heard that they had laid off some employees or whatever. Definitely flag those. And then also look at what clients are temporarily closed or downsizing. So, for example, a lot of manufacturers have been deemed non-essential in a lot of regions. So potentially they've downsized and maybe they just have a small group of employees working. Identify those opportunities or those issues. I guess those really aren't opportunities, but those issues.
Well, even just recognizing that really leads into the second immediate action, right? Is if people are downsizing or maybe not using all of their licensing and some of their cloud services, Office 365, there could be an opportunity to find some interim operational savings for them to help alleviate a greater risk to your own higher margins.
Yeah, I think once you've identified those high-risk clients, and especially identified the clients that you really that are really good clients, I think that if you strategically look at them and look at what you might be able to do to help them in the form of potentially short-term discounts or decreasing user counts, decreasing back-end user counts, so potentially maybe they're not using as much Office 365, and you can reduce those license counts. Again, this goes back to this idea of building goodwill. There are companies, there are people that worked in companies that I dealt with in 2008 that went out of business, in 2008, 2009. But those people still reach out to me for advice and help all these years later, and that's because of the goodwill that I built with them when they were most vulnerable. So just keep that in mind, that even if one of your clients doesn't make it financially, and closes, their employees go out into the world and they can either be your best salesperson or they can be your worst enemy.
Well, and I think your point is very valid. I left the daily operations of my MSP 5 years ago and sold the business 4 years ago. And in the last couple of weeks, I've had texts and phone calls from my old MSP clients asking for advice of how they should be handling this. That
Sure.
shows the type of relationships you can build. I haven't even talked with some of these people for at least 4 years, and they still kept my cell number and are texting me to ask me questions. I mean, that there tells and shows the proof of what doing good for your clients right now and partnering with them and working with them through this can do for you.
Yeah, and that is the key word, right? Are you their business partner or are you just a service provider to them?
Big time. So let's jump into the next few weeks again of what we need to do. Those are the immediate actions. Now, how do we leverage that evaluation and categorization and understanding of our clients?
Yeah, so I think, really staying on top of progress billings. A lot of times we kind of allow that to work on autopilot to some extent, but we really need to stay on top of that to make sure that we are as on top of our cash flow as possible. So trying to get those progress bills out in a timely fashion and pushing to meet project milestones in as quick a manner as possible, I think is really a critical thing to be looking at.
Yeah, definitely. And it kind of goes into the next one, is staying on top of things, is account receivable balances and the aging of them, right? You've got this potential risk coming in of clients looking for discounts or deferrals or financial relief. See what you can do to maximize your own cash holdings and start going out and finding the right way to collect on some things. I mean, if you're looking at your aging reports, probably going out to the people that are 90, 120 days plus is not going to be very fruitful for you because they were already struggling to pay, and now they definitely will. So going to some of your clients that maybe are hitting those 45, 60 days at this point and saying, hey, I know that we're in tight times, but I need to work on this, and find out a way to get a payment plan going to get the amount of, or the most amount of cash in your pocket as possible to help you sustain.
Sure, and not only where you're at today, but as you go forward, any client that goes longer in terms of aging that is normal should be a red flag, and you should definitely be communicating with them, because you're better off not sticking your head in the sand and just kind of waiting for something to happen. You're much better off talking to these clients, finding out what the situation is, and trying to work out, payment plans and so forth.
Well, and I think the other point is that a lot of people are giving attention where the squeaky wheel is, right? They're trying their best to conserve money and hold on to it at the same time. So if people aren't reaching out asking for payment, they may not
Sure.
be proactively offering that payment at this point in time. So
Absolutely.
Get that phone call in before some other vendor or supplier of your client is, and increase your chance of getting some of that money. Now we'll jump into other ways to improve your financial standing and cash available. Talking about financing.
Yeah, and I think that financing, is huge. Leasing, I think, in a lot of MSPs has fallen out of favor a little bit in the past couple of years, but I think this is definitely something to look at. And then also making contacts with commercial lenders in your area. So, working with banks and potentially just direct commercial lenders so that you have some financing products to recommend, you have some contacts to get your client in touch with in the lending industry. Working with the distributors. I know that a lot of them are announcing some new financing plans for end users, and also some vendors as well. So working with all of those options, exploring all of those options, because I think financing is going to be a big deal. And we got to remember that in 2008, credit wasn't available, and today it is.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, if there is potential risk of your clients not having cash to do, even taking that next step in business partnership and helping them through finding financing or whatever. If there's projects that they had or whatever, see if there's a leasing company that can work with to help them offset that, so you still get paid for your projects.
Sure.
Maybe there's things that you were looking at and proposed, and they said, now we can't do that because we don't have the money to outlay that. Introduce leasing. I mean, that was a big way that I grew my MSP, which really started during the recession last time, to go through things, because you took it into this, bite-sized chunks of financing, and it allowed the clients to be able to retain and reserve their own cash to do it. And I think the next sub point here is good too: automated payments and credit card payments.
Yeah, and again, this, some MSPs do a lot of credit card payment type work, and then others frown on it and may not do any. And I think, again, it's better to take a 3% hit and get your money than risk not getting your money. So exploring credit card payments and ACH and those kinds of things, especially for recurring billings, I think is definitely helpful to your cash flow.
Well, and credit cards are something that the clients already have credit available, probably, unless they've maxed them out. And paying for their IT services may not have been something that they thought they could do on credit card.
Sure,
so
absolutely.
yes, it takes a little chunk out of your margin, but it also gets you cash. So there's that.
And they may get points so that when all of this is over and we all go on vacation, they'll have some points there.
Oh, vacation and travel.
Yeah, boy, I'm looking forward to that. The last thing is hardware as a service, and this was huge for us. I mean, we did a ton of this during 2007, 2008, 2009. And really, it allows you to bundle hardware into your managed services offerings as a monthly fee. And there's a lot of different ways to finance this. We did it through a bank on the back end, but there's also companies that specialize in financing plans that allow you to do it, and also vendors that have their own programs so that your client pays you a monthly fee, and then you pay your vendor on a monthly basis. But this really allows you to standardize and still get proper hardware out into your clients' networks. And my favorite here is firewalls. I think that's a great offering.
Yeah, that's exactly what we did. We worked with, I won't name the firewall vendor, but we worked with them, and we came up and helped them create a HAS offering for MSPs to offer out. And that's where we did it. And it standardized our firewalls across our clients, got us a little bit more revenue, mitigated tickets when it came to security, because it was a good next-gen UTM. And it just overall allowed us to do so much more. So it was really good.
Yep.
Before we jump away from this one to the back office, we want to run another poll here, having talked about the clients and staying on top of things and retention. But have you already been approached by customers in financial distress? Just a quick yes or no. We want to know kind of what we're looking at, how many people are being impacted. We already saw what you're expecting for a financial hit, but wanted to get a look at how many of you have been approached already. So we'll give you a second to get that in, and then we'll be, jumping into back office. Arguably one of the least interesting topics on the surface, but realistically, one of the most critical parts of working through this.
Yeah, and absolutely, and I think easily forgotten about as well. And it's just so critical for anyone, any MSP, to kind of navigate their way through these challenging times.
Absolutely. So these 67% of people that have been approached, while we gave you some ideas on client retention and client management here, the back office, I would suggest pay close attention to this information now coming out, because it will help make sure that your business is one of those survivors moving through this incident. Just making sure that your house is in order, right? Running a mindful business. So.
For sure. Okay, so I think the first thing we need to talk about just is legal compliance with work conditions. So in most regions, there are significant new legislation at the state, the federal, the provincial levels, it really telling you what you have to do to keep your workers safe. So you really need to stay on top of that. Again, it's all pretty new and changing, by the way, in some cases on a daily basis. I know I was reading this morning in the U.S. here that there's been some new CDC guidelines.
Yeah, it's such a dynamic and rapidly changing environment right now. So staying on top of this stuff is important. The next is, what we've already talked about, available credit. And we talked about it for clients and helping clients through it, but looking at yourselves, right? What do you need to be able to sustain and move through, whether that's topping up an operating line or finding other available credit for your own business.
Yeah, and we have to remember it's not 2008. The biggest challenge we all faced in 2008 is there was no credit. I mean, we could not get credit. We don't have that situation right now. Banking is strong, credit availability is strong. There are relief dollars in a lot of regions from the government. So it's a very different landscape in terms of credit.
Well, and helping to determine how much credit you might need is this next point, is being honest with yourself on what your financial profile is now and what it was coming into this.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of business owners are very silver lining personalities. They see the glass as half full. But I think in this case, we really need to be honest with ourselves, brutally honest with ourselves, to really understand where we are from a financial perspective, and that will help shape making some really potentially difficult decisions here in the near term and short term.
Absolutely, and continuing on in that stream is what you need to look at of understanding what magnitude of actions and adjustments you might have to make.
Yep, and identifying kind of, if you have to make cuts and when you might have to make cuts, and kind of creating, triggers in your mind of the things that, if this happens, then I'm going to do this kind of scenarios.
Yeah, definitely. So let's jump in deeper on that legal compliance, immediate actions.
Yeah, so again, you've got some workplace requirements. In the U.S., there's requirements in terms of social distancing, so how far employees are allowed to be placed. So that may mean moving around workspaces if you have employees coming in, limiting their contact, those kinds of things, providing sanitizer and other things may be required. And certainly all of that's prudent, even if it's not required. If you have workers moving around, we are deemed an essential business, I think, pretty much everywhere. So you may have to have paperwork given to your employees so that they can move around and get to where they need to be with clients and so forth. And then also there are a lot of paid and unpaid sick leave requirements and reimbursements that are out there that governments are imposing. And again, these are all, in a lot of cases, very new. And so you really need to stay on top of those things.
Yeah, no, it's one of these things that, there's depending on the jurisdiction that you're in, there's requirements that if somebody's even been exposed to a person that's sick or has somebody in their house that's sick, that you need to give them 10 days paid leave to deal with this. And so recognizing what your requirements are for that and what risk it is, again, on the staffing side, if you have one or more of your technical team that need to take care of that. So
sure.
Jumping in over the next few weeks, I love this top point. It's so valid. Call your accountant. So many MSPs don't have a CFO or a director of finance or controller in their business. So understanding where you sit is going to be best advised by your accountants.
Yeah, and recognize that your accountant is also overwhelmed. I mean, I know that I have quite a few friends that are CPAs, and they are all going crazy because all of their clients are essentially simultaneously calling them. So, definitely put that call in, get an appointment, and get in line to speak to your accountant, because they can really help advise you and offer, I think, a more candid view, I guess might be the right word, of where you sit financially than maybe you can do yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of ties into understanding, once you know where you're at, what you need to do, right? And what you can go on. And I know, like we've said, there's credit available, but understanding the different avenues that you can go.
And understanding that the best time to go and get more credit is before you need it. If you are financially strapped and going into the bank and asking for an increase in your credit line, for example, that's not the best time to be doing that. You want to do that when your P&L and your balance sheet are as strong as possible. So definitely look at your lines of credit. If you don't have one, get one open. If you can expand your line of credit, do so. Look at your lines of credit from your distributors and see if there's room to expand those. Look at ways to potentially change or I don't know if refinancing's maybe the right thing to do right now, but look at your long-term credit and see if there's changes that might be beneficial. And then also evaluate your any sort of loan programs and grant programs in the U.S. and Canada both. I know there's some very, very significant relief programs that are available, and it can really, really help you, if as things get tough here in the future.
Yeah, we did a session last week actually for our partners with Dave here, specifically covering the CARES Act in the US and helping navigate that for PPP and EIDL. So if you didn't see that session, if you didn't attend it, go to our COVID-19 resource hub on SolarWinds' website, and there is a recorded copy there for you to review it. The link to the resource hub is in the chat of GoToWebinar here.
Yeah, and finally, in the U.S. and in a lot of other regions, there are some government reimbursements if your employees are off sick or off dealing with someone who is sick or dealing with childcare issues. So there's some reimbursement dollars there as well.
Yeah, I think this next point is really good. I mean, we did a session last week also on revenue preservation. Again, the resource hub has a copy of that for you. But one of the most interesting stats that came out of that to me was that the bottom 17% of the market in a recession or a crisis actually go out of business, and the top 10% flourish and actually grow through it. Then you've got this middle 73% that survives. Now, this is one of those things where you can really closely evaluate and understand, are you in the preservation mode or are you in the getting stronger mode? Or possibly are you in the I need to work to get into preservation mode? So it'll really help you establish and understand what strategy you need to take to either better your likelihood of surviving and preserving through this, or what tweaks you can make maybe to jump into that top 10% to leverage financing. Maybe you are fine and you're going to survive it normally as you would, but that little bit of additional financing can actually push you over the edge to a growth mode where you do get stronger as a business and flourish through this.
Yeah, for sure. And again, this is really something that you have to look at very objectively, and where you were going into this really tells you where you need to be in terms of this line of thinking. So.
And then your famous thing is always have a plan B.
Yeah, always have a plan B. So, no matter what you think is going to happen or where you think things are, always be thinking about what you're going to do if things don't turn out the way you want them to. And that plan B might be both a positive, so if things aren't as bad as what we think, and having one on the other side that if it's worse than what you're planning, definitely be thinking about those things, because you don't want to be reacting. You want to be dealing with things in a planned, methodical way as much as possible in this kind of crazy time.
Definitely. Okay, so we're starting to run short on time, but we want to jump in on sales now and the recognition that there are rough waters ahead. There is a limited market, but there is an opportunistic approach to all of this. So let's dive in a little bit here, Dave.
Yeah, so I think a lot of project work is going to be postponed, but I also think there's going to be a lot of opportunities. You know, the work anytime, anywhere movement that was probably from about 10 years ago, I'm sure has resurged, you know, at even greater levels than what we saw before. There are industries that are what I call counter-cyclical, so they're actually doing much better than they would normally be doing, and there are opportunities there. So there are opportunities out there if you look.
Yeah, and you just need to be strategic about them, right? So I know we've talked a lot about the security opportunity that exists. Yet at the same time, you need to be mindful with any opportunity what roadblocks you might have in kind of engaging to implement a strategy around it. And one of those could be supply chain issues right now.
Yeah, and I've been in this business for almost 30 years, and while we've had our supply chain issues in I would say pretty limited areas, so memory is a big one that used to bite us a lot, CPUs, those kinds of things. I've never been in a situation where you've had such a widespread supply chain issue. So, you know, if you go out and search the distributors right now, it's hard to find PCs. It's even harder to find laptops, webcams. I mean, there's a lot of supply chain issues, and we really, really need to think about those with projects and sales.
Yeah, so let's dive in on some actions that we can take and how we can navigate some of this.
Yeah, so I think this is a big issue, and I see a lot of marketing still going on that, in my opinion, is very tone deaf and doesn't take into account things that are going on. You know, I think you definitely want to, you know, scale back your formal marketing temporarily. So really look at what messaging you're sending out there, and just try to market only to, you know, what are clients' immediate needs, and also capitalize on organic and referral type business.
Yeah, like we said earlier, this is an amazing time to generate goodwill, and so it's not hard to stay present and available in the market so that people can still be made aware of your brand and your business, but being cognizant and respectful of what's going on. So tuning it more to an educational approach, tuning it more to community involvement, whether it's doing things and helping out local seniors' homes who can't get out to go get necessities, right? Or schools with crafts to help the students that are all working from home. I mean, there's ways to stay visible in your community and the regions that you play in without being hard pitches and being able to be available there.
Sure, absolutely. I think over the next few weeks, again, I mentioned this earlier, you know, there are opportunities with essential industries. There are security opportunities, given that we have such a much higher threat profile right now. You've just got a lot more going on. So I think it's obvious to a lot of our clients that there are these security threats. So I think really trying to identify those potential opportunities is important, you know, in the next few weeks.
Definitely. And then again, being mindful of the supply chain issues, right? If there are, you know, hardware shortages right now, and I know we've had hard drive shortages in the past and other things, this is almost an everything shortage. So maybe focus more on soft service opportunities, things where it can be a software solution based sale, which isn't going to face those same supply chain hurdles that you might with some of the hardware.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that, like I said, this supply chain situation is really, really significant. And then I think finally, you know, and I've seen this already going on. You know, we have some non-channel dedicated vendors that are changing their programs, and potentially I've already heard of them going direct to our end users, so trying to bypass the channel. and I've seen this before. This has happened in other downturns as well. But really take a look at your vendor list and look at who might be in that situation of going direct again, and potentially bolstering your vendor list to include some other vendors that may be a little bit more channel friendly.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. Let's head into, we got a few minutes left here, but we're going to enter into a Q&A section now. So if you do have questions, please put them in the question panel of GoToWebinar's sidebar there. As we're watching some questions come in, I did want to pop up a quick note here about the COVID-19 resource hub that we've got from SolarWinds. It covers all of our upcoming webinars. Next week we've got sessions coming up on managing cash flow to maximizing profitability. We did our past sessions, so you can register for new ones. You can view the recordings of old ones, see some of the resources we're putting up there, like the white paper on the CARES Act, some other videos coming soon. So it is there, it is available. The link's in the chat there. So please get your questions in. And while we're starting to answer some of the questions, we will launch a final poll just to see what you thought about the session. We do strive to always bring value to our partners and help them, especially right now. So getting an understanding of how you felt the session was to be great. So we've had a few people, client retention and sales and marketing is the big topics that we've seen the last couple sessions, Dave. And people are curious, what outside of security, or even security can be quite broad, what specific opportunities do you think that they should be approaching or looking for at this point in time, and how to approach them?
Yeah, so again, if you've got any potential clients that are in counter-cyclical industries so that they're doing well, they may be scaling up their own employee headcount, so opportunities there I think are important. We made a lot of changes quickly in terms of getting people working from home, and in some cases we may have taken some shortcuts. So there may be some VPN type opportunities, some remote desktop type opportunities, moving some services to the cloud that may not be in the cloud now. Performance issues. If they're in this remote work environment and they're having performance issues, there may be some opportunities there for some infrastructure projects.
Yeah, well, and I think one other thing that we've talked about before is, while it's a great time to generate goodwill, again, there is an opportunity to have maybe bad will. And this is where people are very focused on maximizing the value that they're getting for the dollars they're spending. So maybe some of the competitors of the people on the call here haven't done a spectacular job running and moving people to work from home, and your clients could be advocates for you on LinkedIn or what have you, commending you and tagging you. So this could actually drive an opportunity for some of those customers or prospects that are looking to maximize their investments to go to somebody that they feel would take better care of them, especially in this time. So reaching out to your clients that have been doing good and commending you and complimenting you, and just asking them for that favor of a single post tagging you on LinkedIn can be very opportunistic in itself. The one other one I'll touch on again that you mentioned there was, seeing what other performance things you can do. Network monitoring is one of those things where you can provide supplemental assistance and service here when it's a period where, with so many remote workers and maybe connecting into the office and what have you, maximizing bandwidth on networks is going to be invaluable. So being able to trace and track that properly could be an opportunity as well.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, so I think we've gotten most of the questions handled here. There weren't too many. Somebody was asking about security focused packages for home computers with SolarWinds. We've done a few things product wise to focus on the security profile of agents and computers that we're supporting. We will pass any questions about that along to your customer success manager, and they will get back to you with some advice and options there. So Thank you, Dave, first for your time today to work with us on this session. Thank you to everybody who took the time out to attend this. We hope you did find value in it, and we look forward to seeing you on a future session. So thank you very much, and have a great day and have a great weekend.
Thanks, Colin. Thanks, everybody.